Alkaptonuria is a metabolic disorder affecting the degradation of the amino acid tyrosine. While rare, this disease is important to remember because it ties back to biochemistry. In this video, I'll give you a visual mnemonic so you can remember all the facts about alkaptonuria. On your way back to the workshop, you ran into this owl captain. Seems like some weird amalgamation between an owl and a sea captain. In any case, this owl captain should help you remember alkaptonuria. Get it? An owl captain for alkaptonuria? And as you probably already know, many sea captains have hook hands. But what you probably didn't know is that a hard life at sea really wears down on these joints. That's why our owl captain is here in the workshop. He's making himself a new joint. So joints like this have to be homemade to achieve that perfect custom fit. But did you notice our owl captain's previous joint sitting on the left? Yeah, it's a rusty old homemade joint. But wait, doesn't homemade joint sound a lot like homogentisate or homojointisate? That's right, a homemade joint is our symbol for homogentisic acid. But wait, there's more. Being out in the salty sea air has really piled the rust onto this joint. For the pixarized loyalists out there, you may also recognize this rust is our recurring symbol for oxidase enzymes, since rust is just a form of oxidation, right? Putting this together, a rusty homemade joint should also help you remember the cause of alkaptonuria, a deficiency of homogentisate oxidase. So what does homogentisate oxidase even do? For one, it's important as a step in tyrosine breakdown. Specifically, it works by oxidizing homogentisic acid, as the name would suggest. So you can imagine how a deficiency of homogentisate oxidase would lead to the accumulation of its substrate, homogentisic acid. To strengthen this association, take a look at all these homemade joints. I guess our owl captain has to try on a lot of different joints to make sure he gets the perfect fit. But by looking at this picture, you might even say that there is an accumulation of homemade joints in this workshop. Similarly, alkaptonuria is characterized by the accumulation of homogentisic acid. Homogentisic acid is both toxic and pigment forming, so its buildup can lead to the signs and symptoms of alkaptonuria. Before we talk about these symptoms, let's briefly discuss the cart our owl captain's working on. Yeah, that's a mechanic's cart. This cart really makes forging all these parts easier. This small cart should also help you remember the inheritance of alkaptonuria, which is autosomal recessive. You see, we symbolize autosomal recessive inheritance with small automobiles like this cart, while autosomal dominant inheritance is symbolized by dominant automobiles like trucks and tanks. Just picture this small cart here, and you'll remember that alkaptonuria is inherited in an autosomal recessive pattern. Cool, now onto the symptoms. Notice all the soot and oil that's gotten on our owl captain. Yeah, everything's got this bluish black tone now. What? No, my white coat doesn't look anything like this. I wash it like, every day. Yeah. Anyways, this bluish black pigment should help us remember the finding of ochronosis. Ochronosis simply describes the bluish black pigmentation of connective tissue and sclera that is seen in alkaptonuria. Remember back when I said that homogentisic acid was a pigment forming molecule? Well, it actually turns your tissues bluish black, leading to the finding of ochronosis. But tissues and sclera are not the only thing that turn black in alkaptonuria. Notice our owl captain's big barrel of black oil. Yeah, that's definitely how he got all mucked up. You see, the oil originally started all nice and clear, but it darkened over time with use. This black liquid should help us remember one of the classic findings of alkaptonuria, urine that turns black on prolonged exposure to air. Get it? Black liquid for black urine. And while this is a very unusual and therefore important finding, I also want to mention that dark urine is not necessarily specific to alkaptonuria. In particular, exam writers want you to know that acute intermittent porphyria can also present with a darkening of urine. You can watch our dedicated scene on acute intermittent porphyria to learn more about that disease. But two distinguishing factors to know are these. There is usually no abdominal pain nor psychiatric disturbances in alkaptonuria. This is as opposed to acute intermittent porphyria, which can present with both abdominal pain and psychiatric disturbances. This is high yield, so I just thought I'd mention it here. Alright, so our owl captain seems to have finished his latest joint. Let's see how it's fitting. Ouch, that doesn't sound so good. Seems like quite the painful joint. By the way, doesn't joint pain kinda remind you of arthralgia? Yeah, painful joints are observed in Alkaptonuria, which happens because the accumulation of homogentic acid is toxic to cartilage. Arthralgias are important to remember, since elbow or knee pain is often a presenting complaint for patients with Alkaptonuria. Just recall how our owl got a painful fit, and you'll remember this one. Hey, stop messing with those tools and pay attention. We're going to do a quick review here. Alkaptonuria is an autosomal recessive disorder affecting the metabolism of tyrosine. Specifically, it is caused by a deficiency of homogentic oxidase, resulting in the accumulation of homogentic acid. This homogentic acid forms a pigment, and its buildup leads to ochronosis, or a bluish-black discoloration of sclera and connective tissue. In addition, urine that turns black upon prolonged exposure to air is observed. Finally, homogentic acid is toxic to cartilage, which can lead to a clinical presentation of joint pain and arthritis in patients. And that's it for Alkaptonuria. Now you can play around to your heart's content. I do hope that our owl finds his fit though. It's like a glass slipper, but for the wing, right? I'll see you in the next one.